Hello, everyone. Let's discuss contracts. Now, I really want to make sure that I offered you everything that you needed to make your retreat happen. So, I've included a copy of the contract that I use for my retreats. Now, I am not an attorney and I'm not giving legal advice. This is a sample for you to change and adjust as needed. And I would even suggest that you have your own attorney check it to make sure it works for you. Whatever you do, though, make sure that you use a contract. I have had to refer to my contracts every time I've led a retreat, and I would have been seriously screwed had I not. This sample is a culmination of several attorneys' suggestions, plus my own things that I've realized I've needed to add and never crossed my mind in the beginning. With each retreat, there will be things that come up that you'll not have thought of before that you'll probably want to come home and add to your contract. But this is a really good place to get you started. Obviously, if you're doing something outside of the realm of this contract that involves more or different risk, you'll want to have more information, maybe even on a different contract. This especially goes for therapists and definitely people working with mind altering experiences using any kind of medicine. If your contract, or in your contract, excuse me, you'll want to have the dates, the location, the name of the retreat, what's included. That's your lodging, your food, your shuttle. I once had a client on a retreat go on a sailboat tour, and she was hoping to go snorkeling during that sailboat tour. Well, they didn't end up offering it on that particular tour, and after she came home from her retreat, she did what's called a chargeback. She did this with her bank, and this means that everything she paid for the whole retreat was pulled out of my bank account. The bank doesn't ask any questions, they usually just side with the buyer, and it totally sucked. Ultimately, I won the case. I have proof that everything that was in the contract was provided to her: her food, lodging, yoga, shuttle, and a sunset sailboat tour. I had no mention in the contract that she would go snorkeling, and I learned that I needed to add in my contract that chargebacks are not an acceptable way to get a refund. Now, she was a problem client. People think that clients coming on healing retreats are peace and love, but that is not always the case. And another reason why it's so important to protect yourself. Also, always keep emails and proof of communication to use if need be down the road. Let's talk about refunds, travel insurance, and cancellation policies. To each their own, and everyone has a different way of doing things. In order for people to sign up for my retreats, they need to pay the non-refundable deposit, and this is common practice for deposits to be non-refundable. I do not offer refunds on my retreats unless I have to cancel due to low enrollment. In that case, I will return people's deposits and whatever else they've paid minus a 3.5 processing charge. A small business owner, it's a huge financial burden to give refunds, so I do allow people to use their payments towards future retreats, should they be the one that cancels. Now, that being said, since I don't do refunds, I don't have people pay in full for their retreats until the very end when they need to, when the venue needs to be paid. Some people want to get the retreat paid off early, and that's fine, but they do so knowing that there's no refunds. I also tell people that because I don't offer refunds, it's strongly encouraged that they get travel insurance to cover any lost costs. Again, because I don't collect the majority of the payment until the end, they really only need to worry about their deposit, which for most retreats is, again, non refundable. Some people will offer deals to people if they pay in full, but then you definitely need to offer a refund policy for sure. And you also need to figure out the deadlines for how much and by what date. It's a little bit more to consider, but I will still offer you a sample clause that you can use should you choose to go this way. I always strongly suggest that people get travel insurance. You could even require it. If people get their travel insurance within 14 days of putting down their deposit, they can take advantage of the cancel anytime insurance, which means if they decide to cancel for any personal reason on their own, they can get the majority of their paid monies back. I suggest Travel Guard, Tinleg, Squaremouth, or Good Alliance. My contract includes what the deposit amount is, the final payment date, my cancellation policy, the strong recommendation to get travel insurance, the low enrollment cancellation date, a force majeure and acts of God clause, a clause about travel documents, and a clause about showing up in good health, an acknowledgement of risks and an assumption of responsibility, a clause of having a right to pictures and videos on the retreat, a release liability, an acknowledgement of COVID and its risks, and a choice of law and venue. Again, not giving you legal advice here. Your attorney might want you to add on something else or change something. A quick note on low enrollment. If, God forbid, you don't get enough people signed up for your retreat and you need to cancel due to low enrollment, you'll want the date that you let people know by to be before the final payment date, maybe 5 to 7 days before. You don't want people to pay you all their money and then you just have to turn around and refund it. We hope that this never happens, but it's something that you'll want to prepare for and have a statement about. One last thing I want to mention, if you've never played around with ChatGPT before, you can ask it for help with creating clauses for particular topics that might not be mentioned. For instance, I had a coaching client want to go do a retreat in Jamaica, and I advised her that it's not the best time to go due to the dengue fever outbreak, but she still insisted on going. I advised her that she needed to get a dengue fever clause in her contract, and I asked ChatGPT to come up with one, and it did. I told her to check it with her attorney. It was okayed, but ultimately she took my advice and decided against traveling to Jamaica. It's just good to know that ChatGPT is there to help if you're in a pinch, not a replacement for an attorney, but it does do legal clauses.